Shabbat Shalom. Welcome, everybody. Glad to see a lot of you here in Zoom with us in our Zoom sanctuary. We're going to start right in with some music, then I'll talk to you about this morning's service. You could follow along with the prayers and songs. The prayer book is on our website, on the Congregation Beth Emek website under Virtual Resources. In the sidebar, you'll see Mishkan Tefillah. That's our prayer book for Shabbat. And underneath that, songs for Shabbat. So you want to open up both of those if you don't have a prayer book at home. Page 74 in the prayer book. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov mishkenotecha Yisrael, ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov mishkenotecha Yisrael, ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov mishkenotecha Yisrael. Welcome to Congregation Beth Emek. Some of you are here with us in our Zoom sanctuary, and others may be watching on our website or on Facebook. We're glad that you're here. I want to invite you to join in all of our prayers and our singing. A lot of our prayers this morning will be led by students in our 7th grade. Some of our religious school students who have been studying these prayers are going to lead us in some of them this morning. And the highlight of the service, the Torah reading this morning, special Torah reading because it's Parshat Yitro when we get to read the 10 Commandments. And after that, we'll be talking about it. We'll have a discussion, which is one of the benefits of being able to worship together in Zoom. I'll share with you page numbers. I do invite you to open up that prayer book, the online prayer book, so you can follow along. Students, if you're working from your student prayer book, the page numbers are different. They're not the ones that I'm calling out, and Maura Sharon has offered to enter some of those page numbers in the chat to help you follow along if you need that. Those page numbers are not for the rest of us. They're for our students. So I'll keep you cued to where we are in the prayer book. Page 77. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe. With divine wisdom you have made our bodies, combining veins, arteries, and vital organs into a finely balanced network. Wondrous maker and sustainer of life, were one of them to fail, how well we are aware, we would lack the strength to stand before you. Blessed are you, Adonai, source of our health and strength. Baruch atah Adonai, Rofei chol basar umafli la'asot. Page 78. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorahi, tehorahi. Elohai neshama shenatata bi. The soul is pure, God has given me. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorahi, tehorahi. Elohai neshama shenatata bi. The soul is pure, God has given me. Ata birata, ata yitzarta, ata nefachta bi. Ata mishamra b'kirbi. Whoa, Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorahi, tehorahi. Elohai neshama shenatata bi. The soul is pure, God has given me. The soul is pure, God has given me. The soul is pure, God has given page 83. As I awaken, let this be my thought. May my day be filled with acts of loving kindness. Let me be drawn to learning and discernment, and may my actions be shaped by mitzvot. Keep me from iniquity, disgrace, and sin. May I not be overwhelmed by temptation or despair. Distance me from evil people and false friends. Let me cultivate a life of goodness. May my hands reach out in kindness, and I will serve God through acts of righteousness. Today and every day, may I merit your mercy by living my life with compassion and love. Holy One of blessing, draw me to your words. Teach me the art of sacred living. Baruch atah Adonai, hamilamed chasadim tovim la'amo Yisrael. Page 86. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. O Adonai our God, let the words of Torah be sweet in our mouths and the mouths of your people Israel, so that we, our descendants, and the descendants of all your people Israel may know you by studying your Torah for its own sake. Blessed are you, Adonai, who teaches Torah to your people Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, hamilamed Torah la'amo Yisrael. Page 96. This is Psalm 92, one of the special psalms for Shabbat. Mizmor shir leyom haShabbat, tov lehodot ladonai. Mizmor shir leyom haShabbat, tov lehodot ladonai. Ulzamer l'shimcha elyon, ulzamer l'shimcha elyon, lehagid baboker chastecha, ve'emunatecha baleilon. Tzadik katamar yifrach, ke'erez balvanon yizkeh. Shetulim beveit Adonai, bechatzot Eloheinu yafrichu. Od yenuvun b'seva, tishenim v'rananim yehiyu. Lehagid ki yashar Adonai, tzuri v'lo amlatabo. Page 102. This is a responsive reading, and so what I would invite you to do is answer back on the indented lines. Don't unmute yourself, just your part is the indented line. Even if our mouths were full of song as the sea, and our tongues full of joy in countless waves, and our lips full of praise as wide as the sky's expanse, and were our eyes to shine like sun and moon, if our hands were spread out like heaven's eagles, and our feet swift like young deer, we could never thank you adequately, Adonai, our God and God of our ancestors, to bless your name for a 10,000th of the many myriads of times you granted favors to our ancestors and to us. Rachel Schmidt is going to lead us in Chatzi Kaddish on page 106.
Yitgadal v'yitgadash Shemei Rabbah, Be'alma divarach irute v'yamlich malchute. B'chayechon u'yamechon uv'chaye dechol Beit Yisrael. Bagala uvizman kariv v'meru. Yehi shmei Rabba mivorach leolam me'omaya yitbarach. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'pa'ar v'chamam v'naseh v'tajar v'talev v'talal shemei dekudisha richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'meru.
Amen. I invite you to rise for Baruch Hu, which is on page 108. On the song sheet on page 2, you can find the English text for this. Ya la 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 la, 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 ya la 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 la. Am I awake? Am I prepared? Are you listening to my prayer? Can you hear my voice? Can you understand? Am I awake? Am I prepared? Ya la 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 la, 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 ya la 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 la. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed, le'olam va'ed. Ya la 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 la, 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 ya la 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 la. You may be seated. We continue with Yotzer on page 110. Jake Rossler is going to lead us.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Yotzer or uvorei choshech, Oseh shalom uvorei et hakol, Hameir la'aretz, V'ladarim aleha birachamim, Uvtuvo mechadesh b'chol yom tamid, Ma'aseh v'reshit, Ma'rabu ma'asecha Adonai, Kulam b'chochma asita, mala, haaretz kinyanecha, titbarach Adonai Eloheinu, al shevach ma'aseh yadecha, ve'al me'orei, or she'asita, yefa'arucha selah, or chadash al Tzion ta'ir, v'nizke chulanu mehera, le'oro, Baruch atah Adonai Yotzer ha'ma'orot.
Page 112. How deeply you have loved us, Adonai our God, gracing us with surpassing compassion. On account of our forebears whose trust led you to teach them the laws of life, be gracious to us, teaching us as well. O merciful one, have mercy on us by making us able to understand and discern, to heed, learn, and teach, and lovingly to observe, perform, and fulfill all that is in your Torah. Enlighten our eyes with your Torah. Focus our minds on your mitzvot. Unite our hearts in love and reverence for your name. Then we will never feel shame, never deserve rebuke, and never stumble. Having trusted in your great and awesome holiness, we shall celebrate your salvation with joy. Gather us in peace from the four corners of the earth, and lead us upright to our land. For you, O God, work wonders. You chose us. Truly, you drew us near to your great name, that we might acknowledge you, declaring you one in love. Praised be you, Adonai, who chooses your people Israel in love. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher ba'amo Yisrael ba'ahava. Kate Wagner is going to lead Shema on page 114.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem, Kevod Malchuto, Le'olam Va'ed.
Page 116, Eva Berg will lead Ve'ahavta.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובנפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מדברך היום על לבבך, ושיננתם לפניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובפניך ופשטתם על ידך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי הייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
And page 117. When justice burns within us like a flaming fire, when love evokes willing sacrifice from us, when, to the last full measure of selfless devotion, we demonstrate our belief in the ultimate triumph of truth and righteousness, then your goodness enters our lives, and we can begin to change the world. And then you live in our hearts, and we, through righteousness, behold your presence. Mi Chamocha is on page 122. Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Ya lai 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 lai. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot osef ele, nora tehilot osef ele. Who is like you, Adonai? Who is like you, Adonai? Mi chamocha ha'elim Adonai, mi kamocha Nedar Bakodesh, Nora Tehilot, Ose Fele, Nora Tehilot, Ose Fele. We continue on page 124, and Dylan Lopez is going to lead us in the introduction to the Amidah. I invite you to rise.
Adonai Sifatai Tivtach Ufia Gitehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise.
Page 126, Geffen Kama will lead us in Avot V'Imahot.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu ve'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor ve'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Bekonei HaKol, Bezocher Chastei Avot ve'Imahot, Umevi Geula Livnei Vneihem, Lema'an Shemo be'ahava, Melech Ozer u'Moshiach u'Magen. Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham be'ezrat Sarah.
Page 128, Josh Nidell will lead Gevurot.
Ata gibor leolam Adonai, mechaye hakol ata rav lechoshia, mashivcha ruach merid hagashem, mechalkel hayim bechesed, mechaye hakol berachamim rabim, somech noflim verofei holim, umatir asurim, umechayem emunato lishenei afar. Micha mocha ba'al gevurot, umido melech, melech memid, umechaye, umat miach Yeshua, v'ne'emana ta lechayot hakol, Baruch ata Adonai, mechaye hakol.
You may be seated. We're going to do an English version of the Kedusha that can be found on the song sheet on page 7. We are gifts, we are blessings, we are history in song. We are hope, and we are healing, we are learning to be strong. We are words, and we are stories, we are pictures of the past. We are carriers of wisdom, not the first and not the last. Dor vador, nagid god lecha. Dor vador, we protect this chain. From generation to generation, Dor vador, these lips will praise your name. Looking back on the journey that we've carried in our hearts, from the shadow of the mountain to the waters that would part. We are blessed and we are holy, we are children of your way. And the words that bring us meaning, we will have the strength to say. The dor vador, nagid god lecha. The dor vador, we protect this chain. From generation to generation, the dor vador, These lips will praise your name. We continue in the prayer book on page 134. Avery Fink is going to lead us.
Our God and God of our ancestors, be pleased with our rest. Sanctify us with your mitzvot, and grant us a share in your Torah. Satisfy us with your goodness, and gladden us with your salvation. Purify our hearts to serve you in truth. In your gracious love, Adonai and our God, grant us your holy Shabbat as a heritage. May Israel, who sanctifies your name on Shabbat. Blessed are you, Adonai, who sanctifies Shabbat. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat.
Let me just say at this point how proud I am of our seventh graders, all of our religious school students. This class has devoted themselves to learning, and so thrilled to have them be leaders of worship for us and to do it with such dedication. Thank you to all of our seventh graders who participated this morning. Page 137. Ever-present one, may we, your people Israel, be worthy in our deeds and our prayer. Wherever we live, wherever we seek you, in this land, in Zion restored, in all lands, you are our God, whom alone we serve in reverence. Baruch atah Adonai, she'otcha levadcha b'yirah na'avod. Page 140. Sim shalom, tova uvracha. Sim shalom, tova uvracha. Sim shalom. Sim shalom, tova uvracha. Chen v'chesed, chen v'chesed v'rachamim. Chen v'chesed, chen v'chesed v'rachamim, v'rachamim. Sim shalom, tova uvracha. Sim shalom, tova uvracha. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Amecha sim shalom, tova uvracha. Sim shalom, tova uvracha. Tova uvracha. Tova uvracha. We take a moment for silent prayer, and you could find words for silent prayer on pages 142 and 143. Bottom of page 142. Ose shalom bimroma huya ase shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'emeru amen. Ose shalom bimromav uyase shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'emeru amen. Ose shalom bimromav uyase shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'emeru amen. Ose shalom bimromav uyase shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'emeru amen. We're going to continue now with the service for the reading of the Torah, and this will be a little interesting. See how well I managed the choreography of this on my own, but we could do it. We'll read Torah from here and a small piece of Haftarah, and then I'm going to relocate into the foyer for discussion of the Torah portion where we all get to participate. Turn in the prayer book to page 246. And I invite you to rise. Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, Udevar Adonai Merushalayim, Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah, Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah, Lamo Yisrael, B'Hikdushato, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo, Gadlu Adonai iti, Uneromema Shemo Yachdav, Lecha Adonai Hagedula, V'Hagevura, V'Hatiferet, V'Hanetzach, V'Hahod. Ki chol b'shamayim uvaretz, Ki chol b'shamayim uvaretz, Lecha Adonai hamamlacha, V'amit naseh lechol erosh. You may be seated for the moment. We're about to stand up again in just 1 minute, but you could sit down for now. Skylar, are we going to be able to share we're going to be able to share the document with the Torah reading. That's great. You'll be able to see the Hebrew and the translation while I'm chanting it. So you can follow along. I invite you to do that. As I mentioned, this morning's Torah portion is the 10 Commandments. It comes in Parshat Yitro, right after the Israelites have crossed the Sea of Reeds and they come to Sinai, and there God appears on the top of the mountain and speaks these 10 Commandments. This is the first block of laws, first collection of laws that appears in the Torah. And it's the shortest of the Torah's collection of laws. Probably designed to be something that people could memorize and remember, a kind of early form of a constitution of the Jewish people, our basic rules. And we'll talk about what these rules are actually when we get into our discussion. So we're going to start in Exodus chapter 20, verse 1. And it is customary when the Ten Commandments are read for people to rise. Here's why. We were all at Sinai. The text of the Torah says, we all stood at Sinai. In Deuteronomy, we read, not just those who were there at that moment, but people in the future were there as well to hear these words being read. And so we imagine ourselves as part of the collective Jewish people listening to God speaking these words. So since we stood at Sinai, we stand when we hear the Ten Commandments. And so in a moment, Susie Mosca is going to chant the Torah blessings. And as she concludes the Torah blessings, I ask that you, at that point, please rise. Are you ready, Susie? We're about to hand it off to you. Ta'amod Shoshana bat Avraham v'Sarah.
Baruch hu et Adonai hamavarach.
Baruch Adonai hamvarach leolam va'ed.
Baruch atah Adonai. Baruch Adonai hamavarach leolam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bacharmanu michol ha'amim. V'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'Torah.
Amen. And we all stand. Amen. Vayedaber Elohim et kol advarim ha'ele lemor. Anochi Adonai Elohecha asher hotzaiticha me'eretz Mitzrayim mi-beit avadim. Lo yeh lecha Elohim acherim al panai. Lo ta'aseh lecha fesel v'chol temunah asher b'shamayim mimal v'asher ba'aretz mitachat v'asher b'mayim mitachat la'aretz. Lo tishtachaveh lahem v'lo tavdeim ki anochi Adonai Elohecha Elkanah poked avon avot al banim al shileshim v'al rebbeim l'sonai v'osech chesed la'alafim lo avai u'l'shomrei mitzvotai lo tisa et shem Adonai Elohecha l'shav ki lo yinakeh Adonai et asher yisa et shemo l'shav zachor et yom hashabat l'kadsho sheshet yamim tavod v'asita chom lachtecha v'yom hashvi Shabbat l'Adonai Elohecha lo ta'aseh chom lacha ata uvincha uvitecha avdecha v'amatecha uvhemtecha v'gerecha asher bisharecha ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim v'et haaretz et hayam v'et kol asher bam vayanach bayom hashvi'i al kein v'erach Adonai et yom hashabbat vayikadshehu kabed et avicha v'et imecha leman yarichu yamecha al hadama asher Adonai Elohecha noten lach lo tirtzach lo tinaf lo tignov lo taneverecha et shaker lo takmod beit recha lo takmod eshet recha vavdo vamato v'shoro v'chamoro v'chol asher lerecha. Susie?
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'Torah.
Amen. Thank you, Susie Mosca, for reciting our Aliyah. Let's see, get my order straight here. Yes, page 252 in the prayer book, and I ask that you rise if you're not already standing. V'zot haTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei v'nei Yisrael al pi Adonai b'yad Moshe. Hallelujah, hallelujah, ivdu avdei Adonai. Hallelujah, hallelujah, ivdu avdei Adonai. Hallelujah, hallelujah, ivdu avdei Adonai. Hallelujah, hallelujah, avdei Adonai. Hallelujah, hallelujah, ivdu avdei Adonai. Hallelujah, hallelujah, avdei Adonai. You may be seated. We're going to read the opening verses of the Haftarah. And what's particularly interesting about this Haftarah, which comes from the book of Isaiah, is that it includes one of the familiar passages that we have in the prayer book, Kadosh, 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 holy, holy, holy. What's going on in this passage in Isaiah is that Isaiah has been transported up into heaven. He uses the transporter, and he disapparates and reappears in heaven, where he gets to see the heavenly choir of angels. Now, angels only have one purpose. They exist only for single purposes, and these angels have the purpose of praising God. And all they do is pronounce God's holiness, Kadosh. And the repetition 3 times of Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh indicates that these angels are calling back and forth. One line says Kadosh, and the other line answers Kadosh, and back and forth. And that's what they do. While they're doing it, they're flying. And the passage describes their wings. These angels have 6 wings. I don't know what kind of creature that is with 6 wings, but they've got 6 wings, and they've got 2 to fly with, and I forget where they all are, and the implication is that they're floating while they're saying this. So maybe one line goes up, Kadosh, they fly up. Then the other line goes up, Kadosh, and then back and forth. And that's why when we say Kadosh, 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 it's customary to go up on the balls of our feet as if we're role-playing, as if we were pretending that we were the angels, doing what the angels are doing in heaven. That's what makes this particular Haftarah interesting, from Isaiah chapter 6, starting in verse 1. And let me get the blessing here. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nviim tovim v'ratzav v'divreihem hanemarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'Torah u'v'Moshe avdo u'v'Yisrael amo u'v'nviei hamed v'tzedek. And here comes our text. I think there it is. Bishnat mot hamelech Uziyahu va'ereh et Adonai Yoshev al kisei ram v'nisa v'shulav mleim et ha'hechal Serafim omedim ima'alo sheish knafayim lechad Vishtayim yechaseh fanav, uvishtayim yechaseh raglav, uvishtayim yeofef. V'kara zeh el zeh v'amar, kadosh, kadosh, kadosh Adonai tzvaot, melochol haaretz kvodo. Vayanu amot hasipim mikol hakorei V'abayit yimalei ashan, v'omar, oy li chi nidmeheti, ki ish tmei sfatayim anochi, uvtoch am tmei sefatayim anochi yoshev, ki et hamelech Adonai tzvaot ra'u einai. Vayaf elai echad min hasrafim, uvyado ritzpah, b'melkachayim lakach me'al hamizbeach. Vayaga al pi vayomer hinei nagaze al svatecha v'sahar avonecha v'chatatcha tichupar v'ashma et kol Adonai omer et mi eshlach umi yelech lahanu va'omar Hineni shelacheni Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Tzor kol haolamim Tzadik b'kol hadorot Ha'el haneman Haomer v'oseh Hamdaber kayem Shekol devarav emet v'tzedek Al haTorah ve'al ha'avodah Ve'al hanvi'im Ve'al yom ha'shabbat hazeh Shenatata lanu Adonai Eloheinu Liktushav limnucha lechavod ultifaret. Al hakol, al haTorah, al hakol, Adonai Eloheinu anachnu modim lach, umvarchim otach, yitbarach shimcha b'fi kol chai, tamid l'olam va'ed, baruch ata Adonai, mekadesh haShabbat. Amen. I'd like to invite you to rise as I return the Torah to the ark. It is a tree of life to them that hold fast to it, and all of its supporters are happy. It is a tree of life to them that hold fast to it, all of its supporters are happy. Shalom, shalom. Shalom, 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 shalom. You may be seated. It's going to take me a moment to relocate into the foyer for our discussion, and we might want to, maybe we want to unmute people, let people unmute and talk while I'm getting set up, a little bit of chat. Good point. Yeah. So you might want to take a look at the text. We could put that text up for people to be able to study Ten Commandments text so that you can take a look at that and be ready for your thoughts on that. I'll be with you in one moment.
Well, I noticed that that Trish and Sharon had sent their congratulations out. As your other seventh grade teacher, I just want to say I am proud of all of you guys too, and also ones who were not in seventh grade that are here and participating. So thank you for that, guys, and I will see you tomorrow morning. Remember.
Me too.
I was thinking how excellent they were too. I taught Hebrew at Beth Emek for many, many years, although I've long since retired. But yeah, really excellent job, guys.
Not easy on Zoom when the congregation isn't joining
Right.
you, I'll tell you that.
One of the
that's
things,
a big piece of it.
yeah. When I was interviewing rabbis, one of the rabbis said that one of the best things for B'nai Mitzvah students was when they were able to, start a prayer and have everyone join in, that it gave a great deal of confidence. And I really noticed today that we couldn't do that. And that's just so much more difficult for all of you. You guys are great.
Rabbi, your voice is
Something's weird.
Did I turn into chipmunks again?
Yes,
You
you did.
totally turned into chipmunks. Are they piping the helium into the foyer again?
I hate when that happens. Okay, so We're okay. So here we go. Hi, everybody. Now I can see you. I couldn't see you before. You were so far. You were so far away from me, the screen that I'm looking at. But good to have you all here. Okay, let's talk about these 10 commandments. I'm fond of pointing out that the first 2 commandments are often misunderstood. While traditionally the first commandment is, I am the eternal your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, the house of bondage. Of course, that statement itself is not a commandment, is it? It's not a rule at all. It's a statement. And therefore, scholars believe that the first commandment was probably meant to extend into the next verses, which is, I am God. I'm the one who got you out of Egypt. Don't worship any other gods. And so that's a commandment of believe in only one God. Don't be fooled. There aren't multiple powers in the universe. There's only one power in the universe. There's not like, oh, if I want rain, I pray to the rain god. Oh, I want victory in war, I pray to the war god, like, I don't know, like Ares and Wonder Woman. Like the Greeks had gods for different parts of the natural world. They control different spheres. Whatever you want, you pray to the God that controls that sphere. No, the Torah lays out the idea. There aren't different powers in the universe. The universe is a unified whole. It's one complete thing. And there's one power that drives everything. And that's the first commandment. The second commandment is don't make idols. Now, traditionally speaking, these are split differently. The first commandment is, I am the God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, that's bondage. The second commandment is, don't worship other gods, don't make images of them, don't bow down to them. But that doesn't quite make sense, and scholars believe it's probably not the way the 10 commandments were originally meant. The first commandment is to say, I'm God, don't have others. The second commandment is don't make images of God. Why are these 2 separate commandments? It's possible that you could worship other gods and not make images of them. It's also possible that you could worship one God, but try to represent that one God with an image, with an idol. And so the commandment to believe in one God is a different commandment from the commandment not to make idols. We don't want to try to pretend that God is a thing, an entity, that therefore can be represented in some physical form. That's not what we mean when we say God. Okay, so there you have first 2 commandments. Now I want to turn it over to you. What's puzzling here? What are the difficulties? I've laid out the difficulty and explained the challenges in understanding the first 2 commandments. What do you find challenging or simply perplexing that doesn't make sense in the 10 commandments, or that you feel would be actually probably pretty hard to do? Okay, your turn. You can unmute yourself. Anybody?
Oh, I'll jump in.
Thanks, Trish.
So I actually want to go back. I want to go back to what you said. It's doubling. Is that me or?
It's me. It's me.
Okay. All right. I wanted, the way I would see these first 2 or 3 commandments, depending on how you break them down, is the first really has to do with how we each as individuals see God, what our relationship with God is. I am the Lord your God who you shall know the gods before. Well, how do each of us relate to God? The second one is a statement of universality. So it's a little bit parallel to the Shema, where God is our God, except in this case it's one, but God is for everybody. So it's particular and universal. And the third one, I think, has to do with fetishizing. So where you let the idea of the thing, not the physical image, but a statement of belief even can be a fetishization if you don't enact it. So that's a slightly different framing. Does that make sense?
Well, what you've done is you've taken the first two commandments and divided them into three. And everybody agrees that the third commandment is you shall not swear falsely by the name of the eternal your God.
Sorry. It's the two together. I split them, but it's the idea of one is particular. It's the particular versus the universal, and it's the not fetishizing as part of that universal.
Yep, that makes sense to me. Anybody here want to offer a thought on how the commandments divide up? How do you, what are the categories you could put these commandments in? Are they all the same ilk? Are there a couple of ways you could split them up, Sandy?
Well, as I learned it, the first half is about between people and God, and the second half are between people and people.
Where's the dividing line? What's the first half? Is it the first five, or which?
No, first four, because I believe the fifth one is honor your father and mother.
Aha.
So
the first four are about our obligations to God. Don't have any other gods. Don't make idols. Don't take God's name in vain. Actually, don't swear falsely by God's name. And then fourth, observe the Sabbath. So these are all mitzvot involving our relationship with God. But the next six are all about our relationships with one another. And they don't quite need as many words, do they? It's a lot easier to describe what you should or shouldn't do with regard to somebody else. The long ones are the ones about our relationship with God. The other ones are pretty short. And in fact, mostly they're negative, with the exception of honoring your father and mother. Why is honoring your father and mother in the middle position, the middle slot, the fifth commandment, between these obligations to God and these obligations to other people? Why is that the position of the commandment, honor your father and mother?
Sandy's hand in the air.
Yeah, well, sorry, I didn't see it. Go ahead.
Well,
I couldn't tell I was a teacher.
I was kind of waiting to see if anybody else would answer. You don't need from the teacher all the time.
Well, we'll throw in here that because after God, the next most important thing is your parents.
And how do you learn about God?
From your parents.
I mean, most of us
a community, but community leaders.
Well, most of us get our basic orientation to religion, to life, from our parents. We're shaped by them. And there's very little way that we can understand our existence in the world except through the vehicle of what our parents give us. Now, it won't last forever, we'll broaden our horizons, but it all starts with our parents. It also reflects our people's ancient understanding of the sanctity of the family and how important it was to maintain this level of respect between generations. You always honor your parents, and by extension, your grandparents.
I would love to hear what the seventh graders have to say about this, since they're right in that stage where this may not be the first thing on their minds.
Right. Well, basically, where you're breaking off from simply being influenced by parents, the influences are much broader. 13-year-old, the influences are, the whole world is coming in at you, as opposed to things that simply got filtered by your parents. Sorry for any of the difficulties about what gets streamed. I wish we could handle that a little better, doing the best we can. Okay. Any seventh graders want to pop in there, pick up Tricia's challenge?
Can you restate the question for them?
Well, I'm actually going to take this in a different direction. Okay. And I don't want to put any seventh grader on the spot. But is there one here that's particularly difficult to do? Like, I assume that some of these are relatively easy to do. Don't murder. I suspect this is an easy commandment to follow. There might be situations where it'd be challenging, God forbid, but for the most part, this is a commandment to not murder. It's not a commandment, don't kill. There's a difference. God forbid that you had to kill somebody to save your life or the life of those around you. Well, you would do what you need to do. That's different from murder. Murder is, what we call in legal terms homicide. You intended to cause somebody harm, not you're acting out of self-defense. So that's an easy one. Most of us aren't going to do that. Most of us won't be tempted to do that. Are there any of these that are actually particularly difficult to do?
I think it's interesting that don't murder comes directly after honor your father and mother.
Well, do you find some significance there? Like the temptation is so great. Yeah.
Ouch.
Ouch.
I have a good enough. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You could make a lot out of the order of the commandments. It's curious whether these commandments flow from one to another. But others, any of these that are really hard?
One that might be hard is not being covet.
Not covet. Who would like to give me an explanation? Since this is not a term that we frequently use, what do you understand that to mean?
Like not being jealous in a way.
Not being jealous. That's a really interesting interpretation, because I often think of jealousy as having to do with relationships and coveting having to do with material things, but I'm not sure that they're actually different. Now that you pointed out, maybe they're really the same thing.
Being jealous of what somebody has. I mean, is this, could be a relationship, or it could be something of material, a house, a car,
why is this a difficult one to practice?
Because it's thought rather than action.
It's really the only one that's absolutely clear is thought. Even more than thought, it's feelings. How do you govern your own feelings? We're accustomed to saying, well, it's all right how you feel. Just watch how you act. Maybe you can't control how you feel, but you can control how you act. But here it apparently says, don't feel that way. And I don't know how I can do that. Anybody else want to comment here about coveting? Sandy?
Well, I was just going to say, as I don't know who it was, I think it was Sharon that said, but the point is, if you really, boy, I really like that Italian sports car that you've got. I wish I had one, but I can't afford to get it, so I'm going to kill you and take yours. I mean, that's how that progresses. I think that's the point of that.
Oh, it goes backwards.
Well, could be, yeah.
Yeah.
That nip it in the bud kind of concept. Like don't start so it doesn't escalate.
Somebody else want to comment about the commandment? Did I see somebody else's hand go up? Yeah, Trish.
Once again, when you covet, you're covering an empty space inside yourself. And so you can fill it with wishing for other things that other people have. Another way to think about it is being grateful for what you do have, but also looking for what others don't have, so giving to others as well. In other words, you're finding a way to fill that spot, not just by saying I won't, but by saying here's what I have and here's what I can do.
Somehow, I think that this progression moves in the order of, okay, I'm probably more likely to do this one. Like, I'm really unlikely to commit murder. I probably am not going to commit adultery. stealing, I sure hope that I don't do that. And bearing false witness, gee, it's, you know, I don't want to do that, but you never know. Coveting, notice how the possibility that I might do these things gets increasingly likely as you go down the list. And coveting is just really hard to avoid. Now, the rabbis, and then Miranda, I'll come back to you, the rabbis make it clear that they understand this as a matter of action. Because the rabbis, when they read this passage, they interpret it as if, just what we said, you really can't control how you feel, but you can control your actions. So they take the shortcut. They say, no, it's really not about feelings at all. It's really about what you do with those feelings. All right, you might want something you don't have, but you should not act on that desire. Miranda and then Susie.
I was just thinking that, you know, when my kids see something that they want, the first thing that they do is they come running to me, Mommy, I want this, tug, 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 tug. And I'm just wondering if there's perhaps, I mean, if you covet your whatever neighbor's house thing, if you might take that back into the I wish realm of prayer, as it were. Can I please have? Can I please have? Can I please have?
Oh, don't pray like that. Right?
Maybe.
Like
yeah.
the commandment is.
Well, especially not when you already have so many. I mean, like these aren't things you need.
Yeah.
You know, save it for when there's a drought and you need water so you can have food.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Interesting. Susie?
I was just going to say it can be a challenge to keep Shabbat.
It really can be. You know, taking Shabbat seriously requires a conscious act. It requires a decision. How am I going to make it into Shabbat? I got my ways. I hope you'll find your way. I hope you'll find like the thing that makes Shabbat for you, rather than spend my time going through what those possibilities are now. Let me just put it out there that each of us can carve out a space so that it's not just another day. I saw some other hands up. Sharon?
Yeah, I think maybe more so now in our modern times, but people swear using the God's name, right? So you hear curses and swearing all the time like that. It's almost like it's nothing, but here it is in the commandments, and you know it's in the upper realm here. So it's in lower half, but still, I don't think people think much of that at all these days. I think it's just very matter of fact. This is when you're angry. This is what you do.
Let's let me zoom in then on the two confusing commandments, which is the third and the ninth, and then that's where we'll stop. The third commandment clearly does not mean don't cuss. It clearly does not mean do not use swear words, because that would be so trivial as to not warrant a place in the 10 most, you know, how does that match up with don't murder, don't commit adultery? How could swearing be in the same level? What we consider swearing is really only a kind of, it's a little reflection of what would have been a more meaningful ancient practice. If I make a commitment to you, you would expect I'll follow through on my commitment. But if you want to be absolutely certain that I mean it when I make that commitment to you, you'll ask me to say that commitment in the name of the God that I worship. Because I wouldn't insult God by failing to go through on the commitment I've made to you? And if I did, what would that say about the God I worship? And what would it do to the reputation of that God? So in ancient Israel, if you made a false promise by God's name, you were ruining the reputation of God. And nobody would ever trust anybody who swore by our God.
We just saw our president put his hand on a Bible and take the oath of office. If you're in court, do they still have you put your hand on a Bible before taking a witness seat?
To tell you the truth, I don't know the answer.
But we know the president just laid hand
Yeah.
on Bible. So
You are saying, I promise by my faith. That's what is meant here. My faith in God. And if I go back on my word, if I swear falsely, if I go back on my word, what that means is you won't ever believe anybody who makes a promise in God's name. And for people who worship different gods, for people interacting from different civilizations, this was a matter of God's reputation that was at stake. Hence, it's up there in the top 3. It's God's reputation. Okay, so that's why I say, well, it's not in the same category as just using swear words. But that's only because when we use swear words now, it's kind of like just a simplistic reflection of what was in ancient times a very meaningful statement. Okay, now I'm going to go for the last one, which is the 9th commandment: you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. This is very specific and should not be confused with taking oaths in God's name, which is all about God. Bearing false witness against your neighbor is specifically perjuring yourself in court. It's you are called to testify in court, and you lie in court. Now, lying is bad. Elsewhere in the Bible, we find out you're not supposed to lie. But as bad as lying is, it's worse if you do it when you are sworn in court to give truthful testimony and you cause somebody else harm. You've endangered somebody else or caused them loss of property because you testified falsely in court. So as bad as lying is, it's even worse when it is part of a trial. That's what's meant here. Bearing false witness is perjury. And we can understand that. We get that. We expect that when people go into court, if they don't tell the truth, that undermines the whole system of courts, the whole ability for courts to administer justice. They're good commandments, you know. When you think about it, they're pretty reasonable as big top 10. Okay, we're going to stop here. I'm sorry, I missed that. Somebody had a comment. Let's see if I can pick that up. What was that last one? Trish, you took your oath. You simply raised your right hand. Got it. You didn't have to put your hand on a Bible. You no longer invoke God when testifying under oath in Alameda County. Huh.
But nationally, members of Congress and presidents still have typically do it, but they don't have to.
Right. I'm going to end my participation in the meeting right here and go back into the sanctuary so we could conclude the service. So I'll be there in just one moment. And hopefully if I end this, I'm not ending the meeting. Leave meeting. Here we go.
Claire, you asked about what do people do if they're atheists. I was a notary public for many, many years, and the statement is just, I swear or affirm. doesn't say anything about any deity
Okay,
or
here
anything
I am.
whatsoever. So you can affirm.
Should be on now. Are you able to hear me? Yes. Good. Okay. Okay, I reapparated. We're going to continue with Aleinu, page 282, and I invite you to rise. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, latet gedula liotzer breshit, shelo asanu kegoye haratzot, velo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, u'mishtachavim u'modim, lifnei melech malchei hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Page 285. Let the time not be distant, O God, when all shall turn to you in love, when corruption and evil shall give way to integrity and goodness, when superstition shall no longer enslave the mind, nor idolatry blind the eye. O may all created in your image become one in spirit and one in friendship, forever united in your service. Then shall your realm be established on earth, and the word of your prophet fulfilled. Adonai will reign forever and ever. Page 287. V'ne'emar v'haya Adonai l'melech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad. Ushimo echad. Page 295. We think of our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who died at this season in years past, and those whom we have drawn into our hearts with our own. Zichronam livracha, may their memories be for blessing. You're welcome to join me in Mourner's Kaddish, page 294. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, ba'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon u'v'yomechon, u'v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agalau v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mevarach le'olam u'lalmei almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal shemei d'kudesha brichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tush bechata v'nechamata da'amiran ba'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu yaseh shalom Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us, to all Israel and all the world, to which we say amen. You may be seated, and Susie Mosca, do you have some announcements for us?
Yes, apparently there's a delay. All right, Shabbat Shalom. I'm Susie Maska, Religious Practices Chair. Thank you, Rabbi Milder, for leading us in worship, and thanks also to the congregants who helped lead the service. I would also like to thank our tech mentors for doing behind-the-scenes work for this service to be live streamed. So some upcoming events. The play group in Shara will be Sunday at 10 a.m. Camp Newman registration is open. The Purim Mishloach Manot deadline for participating for contributing is February 10th, and Havdalah and Purim celebration for families will be Saturday, February 20th, and the Purim Spiel will be Thursday, February 25th. More details can be found in the Once Around or on the website. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, thank you. And Thanks again to seventh graders who participated in leading us in worship this morning. Reminder to seventh graders that tomorrow morning we have a flipped religious school schedule, so we're meeting in the morning, not in the late afternoon. I'll see you then. Closing song, Adon Olam, page 321. This is the Speed Demon, Adon Olam, all right? We'll start it out slow and get it up to speed. Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem Kol, Yitzir Nivra, Leit Nasa, Bechefzo Kol, Azai Melech, Shemo Nikra, Yacharech, Tichlot Hakol, Levado, Imloch Nora, Vehu Haya, Vehu Hoveh, Vehu Yeh, V'tifara. Adon Olam Asher Malach B'terem Kol Yitzir Nivra Le'et Nasa B'chefzo Kol Zay Malek Shemo Nikra Yacharek Yiklot HaKol Levado Yimloch Nora Vehu Haya Vehu Hoveh Vehu Yeh B'tifara. Adon Olam Asher Malach B'terem Kol Yitzir Nivra Le'et Nasa B'chefzo Kol Zay Malek Shemo Nikra Yacharek Yiklot HaKol Levado Yimloch Nora Vehu Haya Vehu Hoveh B'tifara Vehu Haya Vehu Hoveh B'tifara. All right, that was the warm-up version. Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem Kol, Yitzir Nivra, Leit Nasa, B'chefzo Kol, Azai Melech, Shemo Nikra. Adon Olam Asher Malach B'terem Kol Yitzir Nivra Le'et Nasa B'chefzo Kol Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Yacharek Yiklot HaKol Levado Yimloch Nora Vehu Haya Vehu Hoveh Vehu Yeh B'tifara. Adon Olam Asher Malach B'terem Kol Yitzir Nivra Le'et Nasa B'chefzo Kol Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Yacharek Yiklot HaKol Levado Yimloch Nora Vehu Haya Vehu Hoveh B'tifara Vehu Haya Vehu Hoveh B'tifara Vehu Haya Vehu Hoveh B'tifara Vehu Haya Vehu Hoveh B'tifara. Shabbat Shalom. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.
Shabbat Shalom.